In this chapter, we're going to be looking at cell life cycles, especially looking at mitosis, though we will also kind of have a preview of meiosis and fertilization. So, in this video, we're going to distinguish between sexual and asexual reproduction. We will distinguish between meiosis and mitosis and when and where they occur. We will describe the function of meiosis. We'll define fertilization and its end result, and we'll describe the functions of mitosis. So, we know that all cells divide, and cell division is actually really important. So think about the need to replace cells in the body. By dividing, cells can make copies of themselves. So when old cells get old and they die, you get a new copy. A new cell will be divided off of an old cell, and you get a replacement cell. Think about those CSI dramas. You know, they're always looking around the crime scene trying to find cells so they can get some DNA. We're constantly shedding skin cells all over the place. So if we didn't have cell division and replace those cells, then anytime you got a scratch or anything and broke some cells off of your body, before long you'd be nothing but your innards, which obviously would not be good for homeostasis. So unicellular organisms divide in order to reproduce, and many unicellular organisms do this by asexual. Well, all unicellular organisms use cell division, so it's asexual reproduction is what I'm trying to get at. So we're distinguishing between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, an organism simply makes a copy of its genetic code, and then it can split in half. It can do something like binary fission, which we'll look at later in the chapter. So the old part of the cell will contain the older copy of the genetic information, and the part that divided off is the new copy that contains the new copy of genetic information, but that genetic information is genetically identical. So basically, when one cell creates a copy of itself, it's creating a clone of itself. Cell division is important because it produces that continuous supply of replacement cells that we need. So it plays a really important role in reproduction, growth, and development, as we will see later in this chapter. So I defined asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is going to be the production of genetically unique offspring with genes from both parents. So the sex cells fuse during reproduction and become a zygote. But each of those sex cells has, as we're going to see when we get into meiosis in the next chapter, it has half of the genetic information of each of the parents. So when it fuses, now it has a full set of chromosomes. So half a set of chromosomes to a full set of chromosomes. So fertilized egg then, once the gametes have come together, so the gametes at some point those cells underwent meiosis, produced gametes. The gametes come together in fertilization, and they create the zygote, which is a fertilized egg. Now that egg will start undergoing cell division. So we all at some point started as a single cell, a single zygote, which is a fertilized egg, and that zygote divided into two. Each of those divided, so then you had four. Each of those divided, so then you had 16, and so on until you reach the point that you have the trillions of cells that you currently have. So mitosis is cell division, and then meiosis is that specialized process that gives rise to nuclei that are genetically distinct. Again, we'll view that in chapter 9, but that's our gametes. So fertilization itself, it's that union of gametes producing the zygote, and then again, remember that goes into mitosis. So looking at the functions of mitosis is the next thing that we want to do. Sorry about that, jumping through my slides. Mitosis is important in growth. So for an organism to grow, because remember you started as a single cell, in order to get larger, you have to have more cells. And so those cells have to divide. But also throughout the course of your life, as you are growing, as your bones grow, as you get taller, that is all the result of cell division. Repair. I mentioned getting a scratch or cutting yourself or an internal bruise, which is internal bleeding. Those repairs happen courtesy of cell division, where new cells replace the damaged cells. Regeneration in some species, so some things like salamanders and starfish, if they lose a limb, cell division can go back and kind of recode that limb, which is extremely interesting and cool. So they can just grow to regenerate an entirely new body part that they had lost. And then finally, I've already mentioned asexual reproduction. This is how asexually reproducing organisms such as bacteria and archaeans and some protists and even some multicellular organisms reproduce. Does not require a sexual partner, all on your own. Just make another copy of your cells and divide. So again, lots of mitosis, has made us into the trillions of cells of an organism that we are today. And just to throw in a little tidbit to remind you from previous chapters, remember that it is um, very well accepted that we actually have more bacterial cells in our body than we have of our own cells. And finally, looks look at cell death, which is apoptosis. That's the formal name for cell death. And it is a process that can carve out distinctive structures during development. So apoptosis is very tightly regulated. And the example that you're seeing here, you see a chick with its little bird looking foot and a duck with its webbed foot. So in the chick, apoptosis, um, early in the developmental phase, as you look at the two limbs at the top here, you see that they are both very similar. They both kind of have a webbed look. Human babies have like a webbed look between their fingers when they're an embryo. Those cells are programmed at a certain stage in development in something like a chick or a human to divide, and that gives the distinctive toes or fingers. In a webbed footed animal, apoptosis is not programmed in between those toes. And so you get that tissue that remains there, and that is the webbed tissue. So apoptosis is really important, and we're going to learn about that in section 8 of this chapter. But some of the things that it also does, imagine that you have UV damage on your skin, so you need apoptosis will kill the damaged skin cells and replace them with new skin cells through mitosis so that you don't get skin cancer from those damaged cells because they could have UV radiation, which can cause mutations, as you learned in the mutations chapter. And obviously, wound healing, damaged cells and wounds, they die by programmed death. There are triggers that we will learn about that encourage them to start in that process, and they are also replaced by new cells. So here's a quick question for you. Shortly after fertilization, a zygote divides into two identical cells. What type of cell division produces these two cells? Well, if they are genetically identical, it is mitosis. Explaining the roles of mitotic cell division, meiosis, and fertilization in the human life cycle, that's going to be a question you will want to explore as you are studying this chapter.